And we are recording.
Yes.
We are. I can see the little red button, so it must be true. Well, if you see it on Facebook, it's true. And if you see a little red button on the right-hand side, it's true.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
The red eye.
Exactly. Well, do you guys want to go first?
Yes. So, hi everybody. We are recording this Zoom call of a conversation between us and Grace to let you guys know what's the, we had this idea for starting a group that where Grace would be, traveling to be with us. She's had some exciting changes happen though, which means that her joining us in the physical won't be happening.
But that's okay.
See, we didn't put it on Facebook and there was no right dot on the right-hand side, so it wasn't true.
Yeah, that's what that says. So we've been talking about, well, what else is possible, and what felt like for us was to actually record a conversation with each other, talking about the sorts of things that we want to be able to share with the group, and then we'll post it up, get some conversation happening with anybody who's interested, and as time goes on through the year, we'll keep following the energy. We'll have more of these sorts of conversations when we feel that something's pinging to be talked about.
And if there's anyone out there who likes to ask question about what we want to, what would you like to contribute into this, you're most welcome as well, which is, awesome way of being a united community online.
Yes.
I love it. Yes, I love it, especially with the French accent. It sounds so much better.
Would you like
I
croissant with that?
I always tease Cedric about that. Hey, what?
Would you like croissant with that?
I'll have a croissant, always. Yummo, especially with drippy, oozy cheese.
Grace is this awesome and an amazing being. She has many, many talents beyond this reality. And when I first met Grace, she was kind of close to the beginning of her journey with Access Consciousness. So my first session with Grace, to give you guys a little bit of background, I went along.
Made you want to go into a corner and start rocking.
No, not at all.
That's what happened.
And you were just beginning to meld the tools of access with your gifts in order to facilitate greater.
And it's truly magical.
And it's truly magical. So, instead of just going along and having, a reading where someone tells you everything that they're perceiving and they're aware of, without you actively participating and raising your own awareness and your own knowing of what's really going on. So it's not give a man a fish, it's teach a man to fish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Getting people to learn how to follow their awareness and their lights and heavies. What's true for you will always make you feel lighter, and what's heavy is a lie.
Exactly. It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Oh, that sounded almost possessed. Actually, that brings me to a point. When you're not being you, it's like that. So if you're feeling wonky or weird or not yourself, chances are you're not. Just saying. Yeah, well, Cedric actually mentioned, we had a little, a couple of minute chat, and I should have said it in the French accent. So what would you like to talk about? And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And what did you say, Cedric? Because that was awesome.
Whatever Kirsten said is truly important as well. It's tuning into what you know. And so this morning, Kai was calling. Kai is our son, and I was in the garden with him, and he said, look at that huge moth in the tree. And I thought, oh my God, a moth in the tree. Daylight. It's daylight. It would be about 9 o'clock in the morning. So what's the moth doing in the tree anyway? So we went and have a look at it, and let's have a
We're
look at what
talking
this is.
this big.
And so it's a small sized bird moth in a tree. And then we looked at it and said, oh, okay, so what's it doing there? And then we looked at it, and it looks unwell. And then
and for the Australians, that was looks unwell.
Unwell, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, it wasn't looking really good
it's
at all.
not a Christmas song.
No, sorry.
Unwell.
Unwell.
And
so,
no, sorry.
And so,
really,
you know, like,
I really should have some food. I think I'm hypoglycemic. Anyway, go on.
It's all good. So it's amazing what's happening internally for me. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but before I picked it up out of the tree, I kind of internally in my head, kind of communicating with it. You know, is it okay for me to take you down the tree? And I had a huge yes. And so here we go. So we removed the moth from the tree, and then it fell on the ground, and it looked really in a bad damaged position. You know, it had a bit of, looked like blood on the head, kind of thing. And the ants were actually,
we thought it was blood, but you know how moths have like a dust. And if you touch a moth, the dust comes off. And so there were all these patches where the dust was gone, and this shininess was coming through that initially we thought was like blood, but it wasn't. But there were all these ants on it.
So all the ants are there on it, and you know, internally, you know, I've kind of communicate with it, which I am, and I say, is that okay if I remove those ants? And it was definitely yes. And the other question that arises in my head is is it ready for me to snap your neck off? You know, to kill you straight now?
Yeah. What is it choosing?
You know,
how can you contribute?
Yeah, and so that was definitely a no as well. And so we it was happy for me to remove the ants. And then what I found myself is actually Kirsten left, and I found myself holding the moth between my hands like a cave, and kind of sending a beautiful energy, healing energy to it. And it kind of felt really, you know, nurture into this. And then after that, well, I just communicate with it. Where would you like to go now? Where would you like to be? And I put it under the cave, under the house. And I've checked on it later on, and it's still there, still alive. It looks a bit better. So what else is possible for that beautiful creature to, you know, heal itself more, so it will live or die? I don't know yet. I haven't gone and checked out. But my point was, it's interesting how we can be like an antenna, transmitting and receiving and connecting not only with ourselves as human beings between each other, but nature, trees, anything's possible. And, you know, when we tune in and listen to what's really there without the mind, doubt, anxiety, fear, and all that stuff, we get beautiful things happening. Yeah, so it's exciting. And what else is possible if we can all do that?
Yeah. Kirsten, did you want to say anything else, or do you want me to jump in after that? Or
go, Grace, go.
Go, Grace, go. Yeah, Cedric, you know, we all communicate, and to me it's about acknowledging. Firstly, you know, you can have a superpower of communication with animals or the earth, and if you don't acknowledge it, can it grow? So I would be saying, you know, what you did was beautiful. It's actually acknowledging that you have that capacity and that ability, and there's such a kindness and potency with that, and not putting your agenda or your point of view or your story or your, you know, isn't this terrible or whatever it is. You know, we've got a lot of fires going on at the moment in Australia, and there's, you know, a lot of points of views flying around the place. And, you know, what if the kindness is not to focus on the right or wrong, but to actually communicate with the earth and what it requires creation, you know, with. You know, I remember I broke, had like, I think it's like close to 50 breaks in a car accident. And when I was in the hospital, what I required was not someone, you know, telling me about how terrible a drunk driver was and they shouldn't have hit me, and then I was a young driver, and, you know, I didn't need points of views. What I needed was surgery. I needed someone to know, what is this? It's an accident. What can I do with it? You know, can they change it? And like, so the surgeon came in and changed it for me. And so for me, with anything, whether it's fires or a moth that's hurt or whatever, it's like, what can you create? And are you willing to acknowledge and step into your superpowers and no longer pretend that they don't exist. You know, you can actually, if you're willing to go with those energies, you'll start to hear plants talk to you, literally pull you aside, wave at you, you know. Yeah, so what else is possible, as Cedric says, with your communication, with your abilities, your capacities, your talents. And if you're willing to go there, acknowledgement's a big part of it. So now it's like, go question. I'm throwing the batter to you.
It's like playing tennis.
It is. Except I
it.
suck at tennis. If you want to have a really good time laughing your ass off, watch me play tennis. Actually, I haven't played since I lost my kneecap, so I think I'll be even funnier now.
Oh, okay. It's a date.
It would be a really bad date. Oh, actually, not necessarily. If you really want, if laughter was your highest priority, it'd be the best date so far, I'm telling you.
Look, I am with you there, Grace. Like, you know, I have capacities with coordination in my body when it comes to dance, but when it comes to coordination, any kind of bat with any kind of ball,
yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
It's not. And what did I want to contribute to that is, yeah, for me, that first level of just tuning into when something is feeling light or heavy, and you know, Cedric went with the lightness of the communication that he'd opened into. We actually we watched a really good documentary about animal communication recently after hearing an access talk about Talk to the Animals. And
awesome.
they mentioned this documentary, so I looked it up, and it was great. And yeah, we can actually all do this should we choose to, if we
you nailed it.
Our awareness and allow ourselves to receive those awarenesses, and the barriers, judgments, and stinking thinking will all stand in the way of being able to develop those gifts and capacities, as will conclusions.
Yes.
So, you know, catch yourself every time you just make a statement and a conclusion about something, you know, because if you're wanting to open into new possibilities, then asking questions is going to enable you to receive the possibilities. The more you can ask, the more that cornucopia of possibilities is going to open up around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not willing to ask a question, questions open the doors. And if you're in conclusion, all that's available is that point of view, that tiny little point. And, you know, instead of you being that vast, infinite being that you've lost all of that and reduced yourself to this tiny little point. You know, so how much are you not willing to perceive, know, be, and receive when you're just on that one point? So, you know, yeah, definitely have an awareness of what you'd like to change, but don't make it a point of view. And don't make it significant. You know, a lot of people do significance with animals, but the energy that Ced was speaking from, that's not significance. That's communion. You know, that's noticing, paying attention, asking a question, and delivering what's required, you know, what the ask is.
And it's quite amazing because, you know, usually I do not acknowledge these verbally, but what it creates when you do acknowledge this verbally and you share it that way, it creates an energy that will allow more to happen. It's like
absolutely,
it's like a contagious smile. You know, you smile, somebody else's smile, and another person's smile, and it's like it's spreading. It's a snowball effect for myself. So and since we're talking about asking, and more things will come to you, I'm asking for more of that to happen for me. The subtle things that we don't see or hear or feel. What else is possible in opening to that?
I have to show you something. Hang on a second. You know how you're talking about living in the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a dog that lives in the question. She's got her ball, and this whole time, I don't know whether you've been hearing it. She's been the question of, like, you know, if I just be here and be present with my ask, it's gonna come.
Yeah.
and the thing is, she's not in a conclusion reality. she's just really present with what she's choosing and asking for, and it's this openness that I can't stop being aware of. Can we play?
Yeah.
Can we play? Can we play? Can we play? Like it's just there. Whereas if she was in conclusion of it's never going to happen, it hardly ever happens, or you never do it, that's a really different energy to engage with. And what's the chances of her getting a play with the ball with me if that's her point of view?
Yeah. And it's amazing how our pets have decided that now is the moment to connect with us, because we had our Loki's come in and he's laying on the couch right behind us now. He's decided that this was the place to be. It's
exactly. Yeah, and we had the green frog go off.
Green frog
croaking. That's beautiful.
So how much more can we open to these? We call them subtle, and yet once you acknowledge them, you realize it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. The universe definitely doesn't scream at you. It's such a gentle invitation and a whisper.
Yeah.
And and Cedric listened. That moth would have been communicating, and it was lovely that he heard.
Actually, when I was talking about it at lunchtime, Kai was there, and what if actually him noticing it was actually him hearing the moth?
Yeah.
Bringing him to the awareness, saying, I'm here, I need some help.
Yeah.
Which is
and the thing is, if you're willing to listen, that awareness is truly your only protection. And like the other day, I just went shopping and it started pissing down with rain, and I'm one of those weird people that I don't really mind walking in the rain. I love it when I'm home, but when you're sort of clothed and dressed in a suit, you probably don't really want to get too wet. And so when that happened, I put the things in the car, and I was in the question of what's possible, and there were 3 choices, and the longest choice was putting it in the trolley bay, but there were 2 other choices that would have been fine, that meant less walking, less rain. And when I actually just asked my body and paid attention to the energies, it was no, actually, you need to cross the road and get extra wet and put the trolley away. And so even though that made no logical sense, there was a lightness there. And as Kirsten said, what's light is true for you. And cut a long story short, when I actually went around, I got back in the car and turned the corner, and the time frame of me walking that trolley that extra way and back prevented me being part of a 5-car pile-up. It literally just happened, and I saw the cars that I would have been behind, and they were all in that crash. And so this is where, if you're willing to follow the energies, be in that question, listen to the voices, listen to the calls of nature. They'll let you know. They'll let you know. Yeah.
Yes. And I guess for me, it's not feeling bad when I'm not in that space, because there's a lot of time where I'm not in that space also.
You make a really good point. One of the things that we do dynamically is use judgment against ourselves to fight against ourselves. So instead of celebrating when we do hear, and that acknowledgement that you spoke about, Cedric, like a verbal acknowledgement, like, wow, I listened, and I would have been in that car accident and I wasn't. Thank you. We go into the wrongness of ourselves. And so for me, it's really important to acknowledge when you do listen. And when you don't, just be aware, okay, that that was a choice. One of the things, kind of weird, that I like to look at all aspects of energies, and I went down sort of a YouTube rabbit hole one day of calamities, people who had horrific things happen to them, and every single one of them said they knew they shouldn't have gotten in the car that day. They knew they shouldn't have walked across. They knew they shouldn't have, there was a little voice with every single one of them. Yeah. And so it's about being willing to really get that you're engaging. You're like a miraculous creature engaging. And if you're willing, they'll help you on everything, even the most, what you think is mundane. Like, yesterday I went to a spa and I opened up my eyes, and the first thing I heard was, "Hey, beautiful, don't forget your bathers." And I was like, oh my gosh, I would have completely forgotten my bathers, because I had so many other things on that day. And being in the spa bath was just a very small aspect of my day. And this place I was driving to was a good hour and 45 minutes away from where I live. So, you know, these voices can help you with mundane things like don't forget your bathers, to, you know, getting you out of a car accident.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, get out of the logic and get into your being.
Yeah. To be or not to be?
It's definitely to be. Yes, but that's the question.
Yeah, being. Yeah.
And there is no question. It's definitely be. It's a lot more fun. You know, there's only one of us.
Yeah.
So be you. As they say, everyone else is taken. So just be you.
I like it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, well, I'm going to, well, sorry, go.
So, yeah, that's awesome. This is, you know, been a great kind of an intro. So for people who were wondering what sort of things we would have been doing if we had come together, it's would have been, you know, yeah, having conversations where we start to learn about asking questions.
Yes.
Tuning and tapping into that awareness beyond this reality, and not buying into the trauma, drama, upset of this reality.
Or the right way to be. The right way to be, the wrong way to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just made another really good point, which I didn't talk about. You know, it's so you've got your Friday chats, right?
Friday chats.
Sometimes
yeah, that you do.
Yeah. Thank God it's Friday or something.
Oh, yes, sometimes, yeah.
And for me, it's you know, I've literally just set up the magic, what do I call it? Magic Magnet group, which is just talking about magic minutes, just giving you little tips and tools. But you know, it's super important to ask questions. Like I had a client ask me, this lady who she'd been looking for her son in Australia. She was from Sweden, and she was looking for her son, and the whole family had been looking, and he was in his 30s, and she was wanting a session because she was wanting to find out how to find him.
Yeah.
And so the first question that I asked her was, does he want to be found? And she just totally went blank, and she just said, oh my gosh, I never thought to ask that question. And she got the awareness that he didn't want to be found. And in that moment, she was completely fine. She was like, oh my God. And then she went into wrongness of, I've wasted 10 years, you know? So this is where it doesn't matter what's going on for you, but what do you choose to create rather than holding on to the rightness of your point of view or whatever. So so that's something that I work with. Yeah. And I know these two magical beings have a lot of wisdom in their own right. And they make me laugh, which is really cool.
So yes, if people would like to connect more with you, and you've got you know, regular online Zooms that people can participate in as a group with you, yes?
I've actually, because of my good news,
okay.
I'm only going to do one Zoom a week. Yep. I've reduced everything else because I'm creating elsewhere. And that's one of the things, guys. It's super important. You know, if it's not, I'm going to swear, so close your ears if it's, you know, offensive to you. Kai, get out of the room. He goes, no, I know Grace by now. But it basically, this year for me, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. And so there was lots of yeses in my life, things that were doing really well, and I loved doing them. However, when I actually made that commitment to me and my life and living, this amazing thing showed up. So, yeah, so only one Zoom if you wanted to join, but also just hang out with me at the Magic Magnet page, because I'll just be in there doing crazy stuff, just like you do your crazy stuff on Fridays.
Yeah.
And then we'll also be popping in, like, you know, every time if you guys have a question, ask us, and we'll chat about it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I better go play with my doggo, because she's tapping on my head so much I'm going to go crazy.
Enjoy that. Thank you. Lots of love.
Okay, lots of love to you. Bye.
Bye.